All right, I want to welcome everybody here at Taylor. I want to welcome everybody that's watching at our Monroe campus, anyone that's watching online. Today, we're starting a new series, and this series is different than our kind of normal series. This isn't like, hey, here's how to become a better Christian, and here's how you can grow in your faith or deepen in your relationship with God. If you want to know that stuff, I don't know if you know this, but you can get the Bible for free, and you can go figure that out. And really, if you're a Christian in here, I just want to tell you this. This series ultimately is going to be helpful for you, but it is not for you. If you're a Christian in here, and I know if you're not a Christian, you're sitting here going, wait, you're going to have a series that's not for Christians? Isn't this like a church? And I believe, and let me just talk about the transition of the moment. Churches aren't what they used to be, nor should they be. Our culture isn't what it once was, and it isn't going to continue to be what it once was. We are in a dynamic shift in our world, and there are very few platforms where we get to get up and make a case for why you should consider God. And that's what we do here. That's what hopefully people are watching online. That's what they're connecting with. If you're a Christian, I want you to take this information today, and I want you to be able to process that. Not with your Christian family members, but with people who are far from God, people who aren't looking for God, people that don't think they need God. I want you to take this information and process that with them because, and if you're not a Christian, we'll get to in just a second, if you are a Christian in here, that's your calling. That's your purpose. There is no greater calling and there is no greater purpose. And I know the weather's getting really nice and you're confused sometimes and you think that getting the perfect patio with the perfect grass and doing all that, that's your calling and that's going to make you happy and satisfy you. But it won't work. It won't work because God has called you as His chosen people to spread the message of Jesus Christ. So I hope that this stuff that we talk about today is something that you can take to your friends, family, coworkers, and you can have real conversations. Conversations that go deeper than, do you want to come to church with me? It's really cool. It's going to go deep. That might be how you start the conversation, but it's got to go a lot deeper than that. And that's the world we're living in today. And I'm going to explain that more today. And we have to start with this question. Do we really need God anymore? I know you, if you're a Christian out there, again, I'm going to get to you if you're not a Christian. If you're a Christian, you're going to say, oh yeah, absolutely, amen, I need God. But I got to tell you, that's not the way where everybody is. With advancements in technology and medicine and just where we are as a world, there's places you can go to get the answers. There's places that you can go to get the help. And God isn't the first thing that pops up. And the local church sure ain't the first thing that pops up in people's mind. And so we've got to start here. And this is where you need to start. Like we're trying to sell something people don't want or don't see a need for. It's kind of like this. There's a commercial that I watch on a regular basis. I don't know if this is on every TV station. It seems like every time I'm on the NFL Network, I see this. But apparently, if you have a cash settlement, I don't know what the cash settlement's for or why you would have one, but if you have a cash settlement, you don't want that paid out over the next couple of years, and you want cash now, who do we call? J.J. Wentworth, and you even know the phone number, 877 cash now, right? And I don't know if you're watching in California, you're like, what's going on? But I have so many questions. I'm like, what's the cash settlement for? And how do I get one? Because I could use cash now. And I'm going through this, but I know everything about that commercial, and they're selling me something that I just have no need for. And when you're out there and you say, hey, would you want to come to my church? It's really cool. They're going, do I really need God? Is that something that's important? Is that necessary in my life? Is that something I should be pursuing? So if you're a Christian, I'm just calling you, you can have some really deep conversations. As long as you're not like super like us against them, that's the only thing you can do wrong. If you have an us against them, if it gets political, you're doing something wrong. If it gets political, if it's an us against them, if you end up talking about Donald Trump, you're doing something wrong when you're talking about God, okay? You're doing something wrong. There's really not much beyond that you can do wrong. Just have an honest conversation with people and ask the question, does anybody really need God? Now, here's why we're bringing up this question right now, because I don't know if you know, but this is something that's happened. There's been a big shift. Actually, and after 9/11, there was a big shift. In our culture, there was a general rejection of faith. Not right away, but right off the bat, towers go down. You remember where you were. You remember this incident happening, right? Church houses were full the first week. Second week, church houses were full. Third week, everything went back to normal. And people went back to this kind of old mentality that was there. It was like, oh, God has the answers. And then when they didn't get the answers they were looking for, what they wanted, they kind of went back. And our culture as a whole has kind of started rejecting harshly religion. Not necessarily God, but religion. And by rejecting religion, they're rejecting God. And so there's been this just major shift in our culture. In fact, there were some books that were released that were a big deal. Sam Harris released his book, and it was a scathing rebuke of religion. It was a scathing rebuke of everything that is religion, and it tore down just everything. And as you read the book and you read the quotes from the book, I agree with a lot of that. Yeah, I understand why you're so critical of religion. Christopher Hitchens was a journalist, and he wrote a book, and the simple title of the book was God is Not Great. God is not great. And he went trying to find publishers. He was rejected by 12 different people. When he finally got it published, it sat on the bestseller list for 33 weeks. And people in our culture ate it up like crazy. Richard Dawkins, another one that's a scathing rebuke of religion, just saying that this God myth, this religion myth, we need to walk away from it. It was called The God Delusion. When he published his book, at the very forefront, this is what he said. Famous atheist Richard Dawkins, he said, if this book works as intended, religious readers who open it will be atheists when they put it down. Now, atheism's always been around, but there has been a broad spread appeal of atheism. Not because atheism has become more appealing, but because religiousness, churches have become less and less appealing. And so there is sort of a new kind of atheism. There's actually a whole new category that has risen up, and maybe you didn't know this, and maybe when you walk out of here today, you'll be like, oh, that's me. I'm one of those. The new category isn't really atheism. The new category is the nuns. People are talking about the nuns. Now, you got to spell that right. N-O-N-E-S, right? And again, some of you might walk home today and you might be like, yeah, I'm that. I'm non-affiliated. That's what the nuns are. They're just not affiliated. And they're like, don't ask me a bunch of questions. I don't really know the answer. I'm not really agnostic. I'm not really atheist. I'm just not affiliated. I'm not interested. I'm just trying to live my life. I'm trying to do the thing. If I got a health problem, I don't need God. I need a doctor, right? If I've got a problem, I can figure this out. So the nuns are not hostile towards, but not affiliated with. They're not hostile towards. They're not going to tear you down. They're not going to come after somebody that's a believer in God. That's not what they're going to do. They're not this kind of old school atheism that's opposed to completely. They're just not affiliated with. And again, you might walk out of here today and you'll be like, yeah, finally, you can tell your mom and dad, I have a new category. I'm a nun. You got make sure the spelling's right, or that's going to freak them out a little bit. That's going to be weird. But that might be you. You might walk home and be like, yep, I am not affiliated. I'm just not interested. I haven't really rejected God, but I've rejected religion. I've rejected all this, and it's just not it's just not interesting to me. Now, as Christians, I'm going to call the Christians back for attention. We'll get back to those of you who aren't. This is our fault. I know it's so easy. I know it's so easy to just look back and be like, no, that's culture. And the media's done. Oh, my goodness, people in the media. Oh, the media's the problem. No. This is our fault. This is people like me, people that stand here like me and talk about the Bible. This is our presentation of the gospel. This is a problem that we have created and we have to own. And people are walking away. These nuns represent 23% of our population. 23% of our population are just like, religion, no thank you, not affiliated, not against, you do what you want to do. Don't ask me a bunch of questions. I'm just not affiliated with. That's a church problem. And I just want to identify if that's you, if you're sitting there going, yep, maybe you're a teenager sitting in the room and you're like, yep, I get drugged to church every week. And as soon as I don't, I'm out of here. I'm going to become a nun. Not the nun, but the nun. I'm walking away. I'm done because what I've seen, not interested in, no thank you, not going to do it. And I just want to tell you, that's where I was. Many of you in here, that's where you were. Some of you are back because that's where you were, and maybe you came back and you're interested and you want to know about this, but that's where you are. And I just want you to know that's the church's deal, and we have to own that, and we have to put our heads on straight. We have to be more serious about what it means to present the message of Jesus. And here's why I know it's our fault. Because if you read through the Gospels, here's what you find. People who were nothing like Jesus, not Jewish, not super religious, didn't believe in God. We're talking about tax collectors, sinners, prostitutes, people that were nothing like Jesus, liked Jesus. They liked Jesus. They wanted to be around Jesus. When Jesus came over to their house, they considered it an honor. Oh, Jesus is coming over to my house. Jesus had conversations with people that were nothing like him. And that doesn't describe the church. The church in our culture, and why people are walking away and rejecting the church so many times, is because we're known more for what we're against than what we're for. We're known for what we say no to, but not what we say yes to. And we have to own this. And so here's what's happened. This has given birth to this sort of atheist 2.0. The non-affiliated, I'm kind of rejecting religion, maybe even God, I don't know. Don't ask me a bunch of questions. I'm just living my life. Now here's what I want to say to you, if that's you, if you're watching online, if you're in the group here, maybe you got drugged here by your spouse, and you're here and you're just like, okay, I'm here. But there's a thing. You're not like all in. You watch people get baptized and you're like, nah, you're a little bit skeptical when we get up here and talk about things, and you're like, man, there's some stuff that's really helpful and it's really good, and this is definitely a good place to attend. But you're not all in because you probably fit in this atheist 2.0. And I just want to tell you this, if you grew up in church or you have some kind of background in church or you're thinking about this pull away, here's what I want to say. You can't walk away or move away from something without moving towards something else. Real simple. You can't move away from something without moving towards something else. If you make a decision to walk away from religion and become in this kind of nun category, you walk away from religion, that means you're moving towards something else. And it's this new atheism is the alternative. Again, almost 25% of our population identifies in this world where it's like, yeah, I guess I'm probably more atheist than I am religious. You're going to get to this place. Now, here's what kind of the warning is, or kind of the thought pattern is. I get it. It's easy to talk about all that's broken with religion, and so we just think of the alternative, the grass is greener, so that must mean that everything outside of religion is good. Well, here's the problem with that. Atheism is a complex belief system. Now, you need to understand that. That even atheists will admit it's a belief system, but it is a belief system because there are a lot of things that atheism does not answer, and there's a lot of hope in the future. Like, for instance, one of the unsolvable mysteries of any scientist's world is, like, where did it all come from? And the theory is that one day there will be a Charles Darwin who will come along and explain it, and we will know how something came from nothing. Right? And what is that called when you're believing in something that doesn't exist yet? That's belief. That's faith. So atheism is a complex belief system that logically leads to some unsettling conclusions. Now listen, it's okay. It might be true. It can be true and unsettling all at the same time. If you want a proof of that, Let me give you this. Your teenage daughter's boyfriend is true, but it's unsettling at the same time, right? He's real, but it's unsettling when you know that he has one. So she has one. These conclusions, they might be true. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say they're true, but they are deeply unsettling. And I guess what I'm saying is, as unsettling as maybe the religion or the church world can be sometimes, these conclusions, I believe, are far more unsettling. And so I just want to go through one of those, and I want to give sort of the same critical eye of these thought patterns as we do religion. The first one is this: the illusion of mind. What I mean is if atheism is true, if there is no God, then that means that there is no you in there. There is no me in here. We are just biology. Christopher Hitchens, a journalist, atheist, towards the end of his life, he was struggling with cancer, and the doctors would come, as doctors do, and they would say, hey, wait, your body is reacting this way, or your body needs this, or here's what's happening with your body. And Hitchens, who of course doesn't believe that there's a separation there, he said this. He finally turned to the doctors, this is his own words, and said, I don't have a body, I am a body. In other words, I'm just biology. There is no me in here. This is me. This is all that I am. And I just want you to think about that. Live your life that way. I thought I'd do that. I'd be like, okay, my wife is just biology. My kids are biology. There is no them in there. They are just a collection of biology. Now, that might be true. But that is extremely unsettling. And that means that we don't actually exist. The second one is kind of like that. There's the illusion of free will. You might say, well, I don't necessarily believe in it. This is just reality. If there is no God, then these things are true. It is the next logical step. The illusion of free will. Actually, we think of atheism as, we can do whatever we want because there is no God or there is no accountability. We think of that as free will, but actually, that is not true. Like the conclusions of atheism, there is no God. The way science explains it, Stephen Hawking, big fan of determinism. Determinism is basically saying we don't have any choice in the matter. We make the choices we make because we make the choices we make. It's just a natural part, and it doesn't really mean anything. There is no actual free will. And Stephen Hawking wrote this just kind of laughing at himself or laughing at this theory, a big believer in determinism. He says this: I have noticed that even people who claim that everything is predestined, determinism, and that we can do nothing to change it, look before they cross the road. Just sort of laughing at this concept is, we don't have any control over anything because we're just sort of the natural process of natural selection in the world that we live in. Everything is determined, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to do whatever we're going to do at the end of the day. That might be true, but it's unsettling. The next one, the illusion of value. This, to me, if I'm critiquing atheism the way someone might critique religion, faith, this is the one that I just go, man, I cannot get there. And that's just this, that if atheism is true and if God doesn't exist, that people don't actually have value. And if we ascribe value to your children, or you ascribe value to your parents, or there is value in human life, you're just making that up. It's just an illusion because there is no actual value in human life. We are just biology. We're just part of natural selection. There is no us. And so we have no value. And so there is no justice, really. And you might get really passionate and excited about there being justice for people that need justice, but if there is no God, then it's just fabricated. Because there is no actual value. It's all an illusion because it doesn't matter. We're all here by accident anyway. In fact, justice then is just what we want it to be. We make it up. It's all make-believe, and there is no value in any one. Now, you might sit out there and go, well, I don't believe that. Well, if you're an atheism, even the smart guys, even the Richard Dawkins, even the Christopher Hitchens, these guys would say, oh, yes, you do, because that's what it means to not believe in God. So just is just what we want it to be. Now, the next one on here looks like this. Something, these are some conclusions you just have to deal with. Something came from no thing. Something came from no thing. Let me say that again. Something. Now, I'm not talking about like something you can observe. I mean, I just want you to envision a world where there's nothing. Like, can't even get your mind around it, can you? Like, people sometimes will ask me, oh, where did God come from and what was God doing 1 billion years ago? And I was like, I don't know. That's tough. I can't get my mind around that. But yeah, I'll tell you what, I find it way easier to get my mind around that than that there was nothing. Just with me, if you would. Just picture nothing. Can you do that? Because even when I picture nothing, do you know what I picture? Black. Do you know what black is? Black is something. So I'm just trying, okay, I'm just picturing nothing. So then it's like the Matrix when they're in the Matrix and it's all white, and I'm like, okay, it's white. Dang it, white. It's something. Space. Something. The concept of nothing is something. Can you picture nothing? Now, let's get to that place where we picture nothing. And this might be true, but it's unsettling. Picture nothing. And then there was something. Why? How? And sometimes, like, Christians get lured into these conversations about evolution versus creation and science, and Christians don't like science and everything like that. I very rarely get lured into those conversations. I'm just like, I don't really want to talk about that. And maybe you've lured a Christian or two into those kind of conversations. I was just like, let's just go back to, like, let's visualize nothing again. Let's just do that. And then there was something. It might be true, but whew, does it take a lot of faith? It takes a lot of belief to get there that something just came from nothing. Another one that's very closely related to it. First life emerged from no life with no help. First life emerged from... Now again, this might be true, but... And this is one of the great mysteries. Like, we have a lot through science. I am not against science. I believe all good science points to God, and there's some things. And there is nothing that I'm afraid of when it comes to science. And if anybody makes a new discovery, I'm not like, oh no, my faith is shaken. I am not concerned with that at all. But the concept that no life, or first life, emerged from no life with no help. It happened. Again, old analogy, but that'd be like finding a computer in the woods. The complexity of a computer and just saying, wow, a new form of plant has emerged. The complexity of a computer can't just happen, and it can't happen without any help. And again, those are one of the big questions. And Richard Dawkins actually said that we are waiting for our Darwin to come and explain how this actually happened. And one day we're going to figure this out. Another one goes like this. Natural selection is responsible for all life after first life. Not for first life, but natural selection is responsible for all life after that moment. Now, that might be true, but wow, is this hard to get your mind around. Now, Richard Dawkins was kind of writing on this, and at the end of his book, The God Delusion, he's kind of going through this, and he's kind of marveling at what we've discovered so far, and we're just kind of, wow, aren't we really smart, and I can't believe the advancements we've made, and this is really a big deal, and he's just kind of sitting back in awe of what we've discovered, and this is what he says about natural selection. He says, think about it. On one planet, and possibly only one planet, right? Because we are the Goldilocks planet. You know that? We're the only discovered Goldilocks planet. I mean by Goldilocks, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. We are in a Goldilocks planet, and we're possibly the only planet that just kind of randomly exists that way. He says, on one planet, and possibly only one planet, in the entire universe, molecules that would normally make nothing more complicated than a chunk of rock, right, gather themselves together. They gather themselves together into chunks of rock-sized matter of such staggering complexity that they are capable of running, jumping, swimming, flying, seeing, hearing, capturing, and eating other such animated chunks of complexity capable, in some cases, of thinking and feeling and falling in love with yet other chunks of complex. Man, I know. I kind of laughed when I read it to him, and I was like, is he making fun of the thing that he believes in? This is Richard Dawkins. This is not a Christian who's saying this. And then the last conclusion is, we now understand essentially how the trick is done. And he's talking about Darwin. And we're sitting here going, how's it done again? This may be true, but man, it takes a lot of belief to get there. It takes what I believe to be a greater faith. And this is a guy who has faith in it, who's describing it. Now, here's my point with all of this. I don't think that you believe most of that. If you're out there and you're one of these nuns that are walking away and you're rejecting religion and you're just like, don't ask me a bunch of questions, I'm not affiliated. I'm not saying that you believe all that. And in fact, as I went through the list, you're probably like, I don't really believe that. And I'm like, but that's what atheism, that's what the idea of no God actually is the conclusion. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. And what I'm telling you is you kind of have to. If there is no God, then you kind of have that. Now, you might have used those arguments at some point in your life, maybe to get your parents off your back, or maybe to get somebody else, or maybe even as you're just kind of processing it, you're just like, no, there's natural selection, there's all that kind of different stuff, and you might have used some of that, but chances are you didn't put real deep thought into what that means and what that looks like. It's a whole lot easier to tear apart all the flaws and problems with religion, but when we really look at atheism, we've got to kind of acknowledge, like, there's some flaws and some problems there. And you might recognize those too. And here's where you're at. You lost or are losing your faith in God. And that's the real core of the issue. This doesn't have anything to do with natural selection. It doesn't have anything to do with, wow, people are just so smart, and I realize that it's so much better. It's that you're losing your faith in God. And here's the point we want to make through this series. And I really want you to come back for Easter. And I want you, if you're watching online, you got to come here for Easter, because we're not going to talk about the same stuff we always talk about on Easter. This is a series we're starting pretty much in preparation for our Easter service. And it looks like this. The God that you have rejected never was God at all. You didn't lose your faith in God. You lost or are losing your faith in a God that never existed. There is a religion out there that you think is religion. There's a religion out there that you think is God, but it's not actually real. You're rejecting a man-made thing. You're rejecting some thought patterns that you've generated on your own. I've been here, I've done this. I was like, oh, God's this way and Jesus is that way, and here's what the Bible teaches, only to discover when I really pursue what the Gospels actually say that none of what I thought is actually in there. And the religion that I almost rejected doesn't even exist. And the God I almost rejected isn't real. Now, here's the thing. The point of all this. I don't think anybody wants to live in a world where there is no mind, where there is no us, where there is no value in other people, where we're here randomly, there's no purpose, there is just sort of an empty void of nothingness, and we just are biology, and we die, and then we're gone. We don't really think that. There's part of us that might be, and it might be true. That might absolutely be true, but if you're like me, we hope not. But we hope not. We hope that that is not what's true. And God is the only hope that we have that isn't true. God is the only hope, that there's some meaning, there's some reason, there's some purpose, there's a plan here. God is the only answer to that solution. And so the answer to the question, who needs God? I hope we all do. So next week, I just want to give you a little preview. Next week for Easter, who needs God? If you have a friend, a coworker, and you're like, hey, why don't you come to Easter with me, because we're just going to talk about the resurrection again, and I know you don't believe in the resurrection, but I'd love for you to come and hear about the resurrection, and I just want you to assure them that that's not what's going to happen. We're going to be speaking actually directly to people who are in this world where they have rejected a God that never existed. We're going to be speaking directly to this concept of the Bible tells me so. That we have a faith because of a book. We don't have a faith because of a book. We have faith because of a much bigger reason. Yes, we believe in the Bible. Yes, we're behind the book, but there's a much deeper reasoning to our faith. And if you're out there, and especially if you're watching online, if you're joining church today, I can't tell you that I've got all the connections between where you are and where God is, but I can promise you if you move away from God, you're not going to find any better answers out there. There's no better answers. The farther you move away from God, I just want to say, is the farther you're going to get away from good answers. And I want to give you an opportunity to come back. So please keep coming back to this series. And my hope would be by the end of the series, you would have a hardcore conclusion. That at the end of it, you would just be like, wow, I think this God thing has to be real. And I got to figure out what it is and who he is. And really, that's it. That's what we do in this life. I was talking with somebody, and I'll conclude with this. I was talking with somebody, and again, talking about, like, where was God 1 billion years ago, and what was he doing? Did he create other planets, and did he just have this awesome fantasy football team, and he didn't play with anybody? And, like, what is a God that's always existed look like? And the kind of conversation I was having with this person who didn't necessarily believe in God, they were probably in that none category, they were basically saying, well, yeah, I mean, that's one of my biggest hang-ups. And I'm like, yeah, there is really no good answer for that, but there's also no alternative. So it's either like God, who is above and beyond space and time and everything is there. These are your only two options. Either there's a God or there's stuff. There's matter, there's dirt, molecules, atoms, however you want to describe it. And one of those two has always existed or came into appearance for no reason whatsoever. Now, forget about all that for a second. That's a big concept. Doesn't that make your life seem like about that big? I mean, whatever. Billions and billions of years, something has happened, there's an existence, but you back up and your life is just... doesn't even matter, does it? Like, what is your life? It's insignificant. It goes away. It's a poof. And there's only really one question, I believe, and this is the question I ask you to consider, is God real? Did God really send his only son to die on a cross so that you could exist outside of this? I believe the answer to that is logical. I believe the answer to that is very real. I believe the answer to that is yes. And I believe that if you apply yourself with everything you've got, that is the most logical conclusion. That takes the least amount of faith. Let me pray for you. Father God, I pray for everybody that's watching, everybody that's listening. God, these questions, man, well, there's a lot of conclusions. The smartest people on earth, the most godly people on earth, we don't have the answers to everything. But God, we're seeking for those answers, and I pray that you would reveal yourself to the people in this room. I pray that you'd reveal yourself to anyone watching. God, I pray that you would make yourself known and that you would show us who you are and what you want. And I pray that in Christ's name. Amen. Right now we're going to be taking communion. And again, if you're not a follower of Christ, you can just pass the